let's start here. So we were talking about a little bit about men's mental health in the break, right?
Yep.
The last time that you were in the studio with us, I squandered, and I have never forgiven myself for this. I squandered.
Brings it up all the time.
I've made a few mistakes in the time of being the host of this show.
160 plus episodes.
A few of them have been with you in here. Whether or not you recognize that, I've made horrific producerial mistakes while you've been here, and I think you've just given me the grace because we're friends and I was new at this. The last time that you were in,
I'm so glad you're doing this.
You mentioned that you had. It's okay if it's not that way now. You mentioned that you had been going down the path, learning more about Stoicism.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
You said this, and I fucking immediately turned to something.
You're like,
else.
cool. So let's talk about this.
So fucking stupid. So fucking stupid.
It is what it is, man.
Certainly, it is.
Conversation is
what it
conversation.
Certainly, as a host of a show and as an interviewer, there's a horrific fucking mistake for someone to be like, look at this thing that I'm doing. Like, also look at that.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter. But I wanted to make sure that I brought it up now, because another reason I didn't address it was because when you brought it up last time, I had no fucking idea what it was. So I had no even parameter to have the discussion with you about it. Like, I had no way to even be like, oh, I know about this, or like nothing. But also, I should have still asked you about it because it's fucking interesting. Okay, so is that still true? Are you still, because it's very big now. Stoicism has become very big now.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've noticed. You probably do because you're into it. But especially with like, what's his name? Ryan Holiday and like the Daily Stoic and like have you heard of this book?
Hell no.
Words. Well, that means that you're really into it. So Ryan Holiday is a guy who's very into Stoicism and has written a bunch of books about Marcus Aurelius and, you know, all that shit, like the original Stoics. And so he wrote a book a couple years ago that's called The Daily Stoic, that is like small passages, 365 of them, that, you know, it's a small Stoic quote and then like his expansion on whatever this thing is. And so that's become huge over the last year or two. I know Kevin reads this book all the time.
Daily Stoic.
Yeah.
1526 paperback on Amazon.
Yeah, Kevin reads it all the time. So it's become very popular. I'm gonna say
I have heard of that book. Yeah.
So I'm gonna say in the last 2 years it's become very popular, because that's when I really started to hear about Ryan Holiday. Kevin said I read it every single day in the morning. You can see it in my stories. Yes, he reads it with a flashlight. I have seen that.
Nice.
So tell me more about that. I don't want to ask you too pointedly about it. Just tell me about how you started to get into it, and then kind of where you're at with it now.
Right. So I mean, at the time I was like, you know, actively looking into it. I think it was more so of obviously, like, one of my best friends is John, and he's a psych major, so, you know, he would just tell me, he's like, oh, you always been like this. So I would like look more into it, but I haven't really looked into it since. I just kind of deal with the fact that I am like very stoic. I don't ever get too hot. I don't ever get too cold. I rarely get excited about things. That's just naturally who I am. I don't know. I don't really like look into like the nature of it or anything like that. I should read that book though. I really should.
Oh, definitely.
I've always been very stoic. I don't know. I've really dived into it too much.
I have a copy of it upstairs. I'm going to give it to you before you leave.
Nice.
You can
I
have mine.
appreciate that.
Do you find that being stoic generally throughout life has negative effects?
I think it can. I think as far as assertion, as far as like being, I think you can be aware fully, but as far as like asserting yourself in certain situations where you need to take action, I think it does negatively impact certain situations, or it can rather. You're right. Everyone's a little different, but especially like where I work at right now, right? Like a huge base, and everyone's a little different.
You're working in the art still.
Exactly, and everyone has like their own way of talking, I guess. 'Cause you know, I'm
It's
sure
a very particular. I've heard a lot of stories from when Trenton worked there. And when Jordan's dad is the head of crane operations in the shipyard. So I hear a lot of. It's a very particular place to work.
Yeah, it's very particular. Everyone talks a specific way, and it's like, I'm not stupid, and I'm not 9 years old. So
yeah.
Oh yeah. Is there a lot of like
condescending?
Yeah.
Condescending. All right, I'm right. You're wrong. It's like it's
sense.
really who cares more at the end of the day. And me being a stoic, obviously, I'm like, all right, well, you obviously care more than I do, as long as it gets done right. So
You got to think about all the people who were in the military and then didn't want to separate themselves from the government and then immediately went and worked in the shipyards. A lot of them are carrying that same mentality right over to it. That doesn't work in fucking regular human society. You know?
Yeah, that very. I don't even know how you call it. It's not really segregated, but it kind of is just by like rank.
It's like tier.
You know,
Yeah,
your
tier,
time
yeah.
in. Yeah, you know, it's like I'm a GS,
I'm
whatever.
This, yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
I'm
Right.
this, so you have to respect me for this.
Yeah.
And like I don't really care. You know, I get paid what I get paid. I'm not gonna worry about another man, another woman's pay. That's always how I've been. But that's probably just stoicism as well. So I don't know. Yeah, I think it negatively affects everything. I think it helps too, though, because I've always had the gift of like seeing things 50-50. So like regardless of whatever we talk about, I feel like I could talk to any human being about it for the most part, and like kind of understand what they're talking about. Which a lot of the guys hate me, if we're being completely honest. They hate that I'm on the fence about most things. They hate it. They're like, well, you don't really feel that way. I'm like, dog, I really feel that way. I'm sorry. Like that's just what it is. I always see things like both sides, because if in a conversation or in an argument or debate, there's two sides, if not more. And who am I to not try to see someone else's side? I'm not really trying to defend my side. I'm trying to understand your side.
Yes.
There has to be some type of common ground, whether it's 70-30 your way or my way. It doesn't matter. There's some type of common ground, and that's always how I've been.
We run into that on the on this show a lot. Obviously, just trying to represent, at least explain both sides of a political issue, and I find conflict within myself a lot of times of like very much understanding where someone else is coming from, like, but I fucking don't agree with you. Like, I 1,000% hear what you're saying. I totally do. And you got here, I fucking still think you're wrong, you know? And that's,
The last episode, that was a really good exchange.
yeah. So that's especially like, right, the Israel and Palestine thing. Like, we've talked about that the last couple
I would love to
episodes,
talk
you know,
about
it's
that
been
at some point.
Deal. Okay.
Deal.
I will make sure that we do that. And that, yeah,
There's been no shortage of those conversations happening online these days, especially. But before we pivot off of this, I want to dig deeper into this. So with like your everyday relationships, your work relationships, stuff like that. But do you find it has any effect on, say, like your romantic relationships, possibly seeming unemotional or emotionally unavailable?
Yeah, 1,000%.
And that's been difficult.
It can
be.
That's funny. I don't ever really think of it that way, but yeah, I guess that you could attribute it to that. Yeah, that's it's funny you bring that up.
I feel like women in particular might have a more difficult time handling stoicism.
Right.
Like,
especially if your brand of stoicism is more in nature and not in practice. You know, if you're not like if you aren't actively trying to practice Stoic ideals, you just happen to be a Stoic person, then that's going to also adjust it, because you're like, you're not doing things with generalized intent. You're just conducting yourself the way that feels natural. And so whereas like someone who's trying to like making actively Stoic decisions because that's what they want to do, they'll explain to someone who has an issue, well, this is why I did this thing. Whereas if someone actually like, why would you do that? Well, this is just what, I don't know. That's just what made the most sense to me. Like, that's just how I felt, you know? So I can see how that would be more complicated for you, for who you're with, you know, that when someone questions that, you're like, I can't answer that for you. This is just what made the most sense to me, you know?
No, it's funny because even with my girl right now, like the longer and longer we date, the more, I'm sure you guys probably do this too, like the person that you're seeing or the person you're married to in union, you kind of revert back to like all your past relationships or anything, like, all right, so what worked here and what didn't work here, like whatever. You kind of choose like certain hills to die on.
Yes.
To me, there's not a certain hill. Like it takes like something pretty extreme, obviously, for me to be like, okay, I got to voice my opinion like harshly and stand on it. And with her, it's a lot different. She's like, oh no, this hurts me. And I think back to like my past relationships where I'm like, well, maybe, you know, if I wasn't Stoic in this situation, maybe things would have been a lot better. But, you know, it's a learning process. So it is funny that you mentioned that. It's actually pretty eye-opening.
Well, and they're different. Do you know who Steve Ranella is? Have you ever heard that name before?
I don't think so.
He's a big hunting guy, so it's totally okay. It's very unique.
Not.
So,
it's pretty niche.
Yeah, he's a wonderful writer, absolutely incredible writer. Writes a lot about nature stuff, but he also wrote a parenting book that's nature, but an incredible writer, absolutely incredible writer. And he does a show, it's called Meat Eater, it's about hunting and stuff like that. But one of the things that he showed on a show years and years and years ago was a method of issue resolution that he has with his wife, that when they're having an argument about something and they're kind of feel like they're at a dead end, they will pick a number between 1 and 10 and like the level of how much this matters to them.
Exactly.
You know? So they'll reach at the end and then he's like, this one's like a 4 for me. And she's like, this is a 7. He's like, okay, then we're going to do what you want to do because I don't care about this as much as you do, you know? And that's, Jordan and I do not do that all of the time. We very infrequently run into dead ends. That's a good majority of the time. Even if we disagree, we can find some type of resolution. But we've done that a few times where we're like, okay, let's just fucking. We've talked about this 5 times now, and we're still like running into the same issue. Yeah. So let's just talk about like how much does this actually matter to you? How much does it actually matter to me? And that's. Forcing yourself to like quantify that I find to be helpful, because when you're having that discussion, you're not always thinking about how much it matters. You're just thinking that it matters, you know, because you're arguing about it, you're having that discussion. And so that's it can be helpful sometimes. And I say that because for almost more like a personal thing for you, you know, to like gauge, take a step back, think about how much do I care about this? Do I care about it a lot? Yeah. Then I should fight harder for this. Yeah. You know, like I should really put more into this. Or if you don't, be like, I'm all right where I'm at, man. I can keep, you know, arguing this at this like 3 level because I'm really only at a 3. But if you care in yourself at a 9, but you're only externalizing it at a 3, you know, you should maybe exert it more forcefully because it's the thing you really care about. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So
I'm not trying to tell you what to do or anything.
No, you're absolutely right. I'm actually very, very, very good at like voicing my opinion when I need to. So like whether it's creatively or just to move something along. And I'm pretty quick on understanding that something's coming just around in a circle or not actually moving, like progressing. I'm pretty good at that. So a lot of the time I'm like, all right, so what's going to help you here? What's going to, you know, help me help you situation? That's something I often say. And yeah, that's usually what I use to further things along as far as progression. If I have something to say, I always say it. Yeah, if it's like actually matters. But a lot of time I'm like, this information or whatever I'm about to say, if it's not going to actually like attribute to something positive in this conversation, there's kind of no point in me saying it.
Which I think I identify with that a ton, with the truth thing. You know, if I'm going to say something, I'm not going to lie.
You're not
so
exactly.
I'm going to decide very carefully whether or not I actually want to say something because I'm unwilling to lie to you. So if what I'm going to say isn't going to help, I will probably just not say anything because you know, unless it's very prevalent or it's whatever, like it's easier for me, and it's not just like an avoidance thing, but it's unnecessary blowback and bullshit from what could be a very nonchalant, easy conversation. It doesn't need to turn into something because I want to tell you, well, that's not true. You know? Does that matter? Like, is it going to change anything when we do that?
Or ask yourself, does this actually matter?
Or can I tell Jordan about it later and be like, they said all this stuff and they're fucking wrong? Like, that's probably better. I'll feel better about it and everything will be fine. That's a better avenue for this issue. I want to hit this comment real quick because Kevin said, Marcus Aurelius said, remember, you don't have to have an opinion. If someone tries to push you to one side or the other, just walk away. Stoicism teaches how to manage emotions, not be emotionless.
Beautifully said. Yes. Beautifully said. I think a lot of people, I'm not gonna say like main character, but yeah, opinions is like everyone does have one, but that does not mean everyone should say it as well. Right. Like there's a beautiful thing about the man that said nothing was the wise man, you know? Like a wise man said nothing at all, you know? Like it's a beautiful saying, and you don't gotta voice your opinion on everything. So I agree with that. Welcome to the salt of the streets, coming at you every week with this food for thought. Hope you ready to eat everything.